A male sits alone in a dimly lit room. His chair creaks as he shifts. His hands limp on the keyboard, the glow of the screen washing his face in pale blue. It's past midnight, yet he hasn't typed a single word. Outside his window, the world keeps moving. Cars hum by, laughter echoes faintly from the street, but inside, he feels cemented in place. Why does even resting feel like a crime? Why does the weight of what you haven't done feel heavier than anything you could ever do? Why does trying feel impossible, yet not trying feels even worse? There's a cruel kind of silence that comes when you tell yourself you're lazy. A silence filled with whispers. You should be working. You should be better. You should be anyone but this. And yet, the more you want to act, the less you move. Across town, another male slouches at his kitchen table, papers scattered around him, phone buzzing with messages he can't bear to answer. He wants to stand up. He wants to start, but every time he imagines taking that first step, the ground feels like quicksand, thick, heavy, swallowing his will. And here's the paradox. What you've been calling laziness may not be laziness at all. What if that word lazy isn't just wrong, but the very thing keeping you stuck? Because when you call yourself lazy, you're diagnosing the symptom, not the cause. And in doing so, you miss the truth entirely. Tonight, we're going to uncover that truth. We'll peel back the myth of laziness, layer by layer, and replace it with 7 powerful science-backed mindset shifts that can rebuild your will from the ground up. By the end, you won't just know how to move, you'll understand why you stopped and how to never confuse stillness with failure again. So stay here, watch closely. The ground is already beginning to shift beneath you. You've called yourself lazy. You've carried that word like a brick in your chest. Heavy, silent, and punishing. But what if laziness isn't what you think it is? What you feel is real. The paralysis, the stillness, the ache of not moving. But the label you've given it, that's a lie. Modern psychology has shown that what most men call laziness is often something else entirely, a storm beneath the surface, misdiagnosed as moral failure. There are 3 storms, and each one has a name. The first is true laziness, rare and simple. It's when a man genuinely doesn't care, no conflict, no shame. He chooses comfort over growth because he values ease above all. He mows his lawn tomorrow, watches the game today, and sleeps fine at night. But the second storm is procrastination, and it feels very different. Here, the man wants to act. He knows he should, but the task ahead feels wrapped in thorns, fear, self-doubt, boredom, so he delays to escape the sting, seeking temporary comfort. And that comfort curdles into anxiety. And then there is executive dysfunction, a deeper, invisible fracture. Here, the man cannot act, even when he tries. His intention is strong, but the bridge between thought and action collapses under him. It's as if his hands and feet are no longer his own. David, a man from Chicago, thought he was just lazy, until a doctor told him he had ADHD. For years he'd been berating himself for a battle his brain was wired to lose. The diagnosis didn't excuse him, but it freed him from the shame that had kept him chained. Long before psychology, monks in the desert had a word for this kind of stuckness, acedia. They called it the noonday demon, a suffocating fog that drained meaning from their prayers and stole the will from their hands. And maybe that's what you've been fighting too. Not laziness, but a deeper silence. So ask yourself, when you sit there still and heavy, what are you really fighting? Is it the task or the quiet terror of what it means to begin? Shift number 1. From self-criticism to self-compassion. Some men think beating themselves will wake them up, as if every cruel word they hurl at themselves is a whip that will drive them forward. But it doesn't. Self-criticism is like pouring sand into your own gears, grinding your engine until it seizes. Psychologist Dr. Kristin Neff, pioneer of self-compassion research, found that harsh self-talk activates the brain's threat response, cortisol floods your body, and your rational mind shuts down. Instead of rising to the challenge, you retreat. When you call yourself lazy, you're not solving the problem. You're digging the hole deeper. One experiment from Dr. Fushia Siro in 2014 showed that procrastinators who practiced self-compassion, who forgave themselves for delaying, were significantly more likely to start again the next day. So here's the shift. Talk to yourself like you would to a friend. Kind, firm, forgiving. Because the paradox is true. The curious paradox, as Carl Rogers, American humanistic psychologist, once wrote, is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. So ask yourself, if you spoke to yourself the way you speak to a friend, what would change? Shift number 2, from perfectionism to a growth mindset. There's a man named Alex who spent 6 months rewriting his business plan, 6 months of spreadsheets and notes, perfecting every detail, but he never launched. Because perfection is a glass cage. It looks clear and flawless, but it keeps you trapped. Stanford psychologist Carol Dweck discovered that people with a fixed mindset believe their abilities are static, so every failure feels like proof they're not good enough. They'd rather do nothing than risk that verdict. But a growth mindset sees failure differently, as a teacher, not a judge. Aristotle spoke of excellence as a habit, not a talent. We are what we repeatedly do, he said. When Alex finally allowed himself to be imperfect, he released the cage. His first version wasn't perfect, but it existed, and that changed everything. So what would you build if you let yourself begin before you're ready? Shift number 3. From resisting obstacles to leveraging them. Most men think struggle means they've done something wrong. They hit a wall and stop, calling themselves lazy. But walls are not there to stop you. They're there to climb. The Roman emperor-philosopher Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." In other words, your resistance is not a sign to quit. It's a signal to grow. A fascinating 2012 study at Columbia University found that students who reframed stress as a challenge rather than a threat performed better under pressure, cortisol levels dropped, focus sharpened. Friedrich Nietzsche, German philosopher of will and strength, called this joyful resistance, "What is happiness? The feeling that power increases, that resistance is overcome." So when life hands you bricks, don't throw them down, stack them into a staircase. What brick are you holding right now? And how can you climb with it? Shift number 4. From waiting for motivation to building discipline. James sits at his desk every night, waiting for inspiration to strike, and every night, nothing comes. Here's the cruel truth. Motivation doesn't come before action, it comes after. Neuroscience shows that even tiny steps trigger the brain's dopamine system, creating feelings of accomplishment that fuel further action. Write one sentence, take one step, that spark grows into a flame. Aristotle understood this centuries ago. By doing just acts, the just man is produced. Without acting well, no one becomes good. James eventually stopped waiting. He began writing for 5 minutes each morning, no matter how he felt. And the more he moved, the more motivated he became. So what's the smallest step you can take right now? Not later, not tomorrow, now. Shift number 5. From ignoring the body's signals to reclaiming energy. Some men think their body is betraying them when they feel heavy and numb. But the truth is, your body is speaking, and you're just not listening. Peter Levine, somatic therapist and author of In an Unspoken Voice, explains, trauma is not in the event, but in the body. The tightness in your chest, the shallow breath, the ache behind your eyes. These are not signs of weakness, they're signals. Your so-called laziness. Maybe your body screaming, "I'm exhausted from fighting you." An illuminating study published in Psychosomatic Medicine showed that people who ignored their physical tension while working experienced higher cortisol levels and were more likely to quit tasks early. If you never stop to notice the dam you're building in your own body, the river of your will cannot flow. So here's the shift. Scan yourself daily. Map the tension. Breathe into it. Release it. Energy isn't generated by force. It's freed by listening. So what would your body say if you finally heard it? Shift number 6. From meaninglessness to self-authored purpose. Michael sat at his office desk for years, staring at spreadsheets that felt like dust. No matter how much he tried, nothing lit a fire in him because he hadn't given himself a reason to burn. He once said to his therapist, "I don't even know who I'm doing this for." Jean-Paul Sartre, French philosopher of freedom, wrote, "Existence precedes essence." In other words, we are born without a purpose, but we are free to create one. Friedrich Nietzsche added, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." Michael decided to stop waiting for meaning to appear. He chose a value to mentor younger men at his company, and suddenly his work became a way to serve that value, Purpose is not something you find under a rock. It's something you build, brick by brick, in the shape of your choosing. So what would you create if no one else got to decide what mattered? Shift number 7. From overwhelm to the next single action. The mountain always looks unclimbable when you stand at the bottom. Overwhelm whispers, "It's too much, don't even start," and so you don't. But psychologists have shown your brain doesn't need you to climb the mountain all at once. It only needs the next step. Bluma Zygarnik, Soviet psychologist in the 1920s, discovered the Zygarnik effect. Our minds fixate on unfinished tasks, pulling us back to them. Francesco Cirillo's Pomodoro technique builds on this. Work for 25 minutes, take a short break. That one small act opens a loop your brain wants to close, so stop staring at the peak. Just lace your boots and place your foot on the first stone. What's your stone? What's your next single action? The smallest possible move that starts unraveling the knot of inaction. So how do you untangle this knot? How does a man move from frozen to flowing? Here are 3 simple, profound practices, crafted to rebuild your will and dissolve the myth of laziness. Solution number 1. The micro-action habit. The mountain shrinks when you take the first step. Commit to just 5 minutes on your task, no more. Open the document, walk to the gym, send the email. This works because, as neuroscientists have shown, action triggers dopamine, which creates motivation, not the other way around. Starting sparks the spark. One man began his mornings by promising himself just 5 minutes of writing. Some days, that was all he managed. But many days, those 5 minutes stretched into hours because he tricked his brain into beginning. So what's your smallest possible action today? Solution number 2. The tension map. Your body already knows when you've betrayed your own will. It whispers before it screams. At the end of each day, sit quietly. Scan your body from crown to toes. Where did you feel tight? When? Write it down. Over time, you'll see a map of hidden stress and clues about where you keep abandoning yourself. Peter Levine, somatic therapist, calls this practice learning the language of the body, and it teaches you to set boundaries before your body has to break them. What is your body trying to tell you if you'd only listen? Solution number 3. The keystone habit ritual. If you build a cathedral, you start with 1 brick. Choose a single, meaningful, repeatable habit and protect it like it's sacred. Not a to-do list item, but a declaration of identity. It could be 10 push-ups each morning, a 15-minute walk at sunset, reading a single page before bed. Researchers at Harvard Business Review found that keystone habits create ripple effects, strengthening confidence, clarifying priorities, and dismantling procrastination. One man began with a simple 10-minute walk each dawn. That one ritual restored his focus, reshaped his schedule, and step by step woke him up to his own life. What's the one brick you'll lay today? You've seen them now, these 7 mindset shifts, waiting quietly beneath the word you thought defined you. You dropped the whip of self-criticism and spoke to yourself like someone worth saving. You shattered the glass cage of perfectionism and let yourself begin. You turned walls into staircases, bricks into steps. You stopped waiting for the fire and became the flame yourself. You listened to the whispers of your body and freed the river it dammed. You authored your own meaning on a page no one else could write. And you stopped staring at the mountain and placed your foot on the next stone. These were never flaws. These were signals, reminders that you're not broken, only misread. If you've watched this far, you've already begun to rewrite the story you tell about yourself. That's no small thing. So here's a question no one else will dare to ask you. What's one small rebellion you'll start today? Even if no one sees it, write it below. Let it exist outside your mind, if only for a moment. And next time, we'll step into darker waters. Why even calm men, steady on the surface, can be capsized by storms they never saw coming. You'll want to be ready when that day comes. If something inside you stirred tonight, if you're ready to keep uncovering what's yours, subscribe, quietly, proudly, on your own terms. And remember these words from Friedrich Nietzsche, German philosopher of will and creation. Become who you are. You've already begun. You're watching Psychosophy, where psychology meets philosophy.